Hi again, guys. Thanks so much for joining me on my channel. As today I'm going to give you my one take, recorded with no stops from start to finish on VAR. Well, I say VAR, and we always say we're going to talk about VAR, but what we actually do is we talk about the laws of football, we talk about the standards of refereeing, and we talk about VAR as it's applied. And we basically get into an angry mess every time we do it. So what I wanted to do today was focus on why this is happening and why I think it's a problem that we need to fix sooner rather than later. Let's start off, though, with a reaction to what happened this past weekend in the Premier League. Amongst all the major talking points, once again, the awarding of handball penalties was very much to the fore. And there were angry Arsenal fans in the wake of the Chelsea-Arsenal game with the awarding of the penalty against Saliba when the ball struck him in the area. And of course, after review, it was given as a penalty. That was actually one of 3 handball penalties that were awarded this weekend in the Premier League. And can I just tell you that of all the penalty offences we've seen so far this season, handball penalties now comprise 26% of the total. That's the highest percentage we've had in at least a decade of Premier League football, which tells you something about the way technology is now being applied in conjunction with the handball law. And as the commentator in the game that I was watching, the commentary on that Arsenal game against Chelsea said, in my books, it shouldn't be a penalty. But given the way the laws are these days, and given the fact that the referee has gone to the monitor, it will be given as a penalty. Now, why is this, and why is it important? Well, for me, it's important because if 2 officials at least, the referee and the assistant, who saw the incident, presumably, in real time, decided not to give it as a penalty, that takes me into an area that I think is essential to any discussion about the entire existence of VAR. Let me just go back some way. Let me go back 15 years. I sat down some 15 years ago and I interviewed the then president of UEFA, Michel Platini. Now, Michel Platini is a man who I think may well be getting involved in football again, or is allowed to from this year on. But that's an aside. He's a man who is passionate about a game that he played absolutely beautifully, flamboyantly, with flair, as part of a wonderful French team. And when I asked him in his official capacity with UEFA about his thoughts on the, back then, remember, potential introduction of video technology, he was vehemently against it. No, he said, I don't want to see technology in the game. I don't want to see video replays. So I said, well, why? Because we've seen bad decisions. It might help. He said, no. He said technology, in his opinion, shouldn't be applied to football because he said football is a game of nuance and of context. And what he explained to me was that in his opinion, football is a fast-flowing game and you need to be part of the game, i.e. as a referee or somebody very close to the match, to understand the context behind situations, i.e. what has been going on, what's the build-up to a specific incident. He felt, and I think I agree with him on this, that if you actually isolate one frozen angle or even a slow-mo of just one angle of an incident without taking into account the context that led to it, the speed of the challenge, the position on the pitch, the relationship between the 2 players perhaps over the last few minutes, then you're not really focusing on all the things that you have to focus on if you're going to make a decision. All of those things tend to inform an on-the-field decision by one of the officials, most notably the referee. So his point was a very black and white point. Don't bring it in at all. Now, I don't think I could agree with that because I think we have seen instances, most notably with the introduction of goal line decision, that were vital. So once the technology was there to say fundamentally, did the ball cross the line? Yeah, I'm absolutely okay with that. But I agree with Platini on context. And I think in many walks of life these days, we overlook the need for context. The debate around football has grown to be so toxic, so tribal, that everyone finds an example that suits their very specific and usually very biased argument. Context takes a back seat. That's if it doesn't go out the window entirely. But context is very important in every walk of life. Technology, I'm no Luddite, will take over and is already taking over aspects of our life, and it's improving many aspects of our life. But technology, of course, has to be used in a way that is working hand in hand with the context in which we find ourselves, the purpose to which it is built. Unfortunately, the way I see things happening in football, the technology has kind of affected the way that we're even legislating the game, the way we're approaching the game, and we're in a kind of postmodern mess. We're forgetting what it's all about. Take a handball, for example. Why does the handball law exist? It's effectively to stop somebody getting an advantage unfairly by using the hand to impede the path of the ball. You see a lot of the handballs that are given as penalties, free kicks and otherwise these days, and you would never ever in a million years think that that was actually the problem here. But let's go back a little bit more recently to somebody who had some issues with VAR, and that was Ange Postecoglou. Now, of course, the Tottenham Hotspur manager had come off on the positive end, I suppose, of a shocking decision, as we know, in the Liverpool game, a complete mess up in terms of the way that the process was applied by the pgmol in that Premier League context. However, he still came out afterwards and said, I don't think that we should be using VAR right now until the technology has caught up with our needs. Now, that's a problem. He's basically saying, well, scrap it because it doesn't work. Now, I think that the only way it does work at the moment would be, as I said, goal line decision system. And as we saw most notably at the Qatar FIFA World Cup, semi-automated offside decisions. Everything else is kind of the wrong way around, hence my comment about a postmodern mess. If we're now writing and applying laws because we think they're going to be implemented in conjunction with technology, with this kind of, lacking in context, specific, isolated image mode, well, I think we have a problem because that's straying a long way away from the organic, flowing product that football is. Let me just bring one more thing to it. It's our enjoyment of the game. Now, I know some people now say, well, I actually like the decision weight, that sort of building, tension. I don't think most fans feel that way. And if you go to Scandinavia, for example, we've had a couple of examples of that. Of the top 30 football leagues in Europe, there's only one that doesn't have VAR in place right now, and that is Sweden, because they basically looked at it. Now, in Sweden, just about all of the clubs, I think, are member or fan-owned. So fans' experience, matchday experience, is hugely important for them. And they said, we don't like it. We don't like what it does. We don't like the fact that we can't celebrate a goal. We don't like the delays in the game. So they've decided to put it aside until at least, the second half of next year before they even think about VAR. Across in Norway, VAR was brought in this season, but the fan groups weren't happy. They felt that it was passed by the federation so quickly, they didn't have a chance to object to it. So they did object. A couple of matches earlier on this season, something like 70 fan groups got together and they voted that for the first 15 minutes of two matches, they were going to remain absolutely silent because they felt that they hadn't been consulted. Their big issue, and the Norwegian Federation has already caved in on this, is that they feel that the decision-taking is too long. They have mandated now that every decision must happen within 2 minutes, and they've also said that they want VAR to be used very, very lightly. So there is resistance to it. I don't think it's ever going to go away, but as Postecoglou said, we need to make sure that the technology exists in a way that's appropriate to the game that we love right now. Whether it means we have to have an overarching conversation about this, whether somebody has to sit down and say, okay, take all of these vested interests, take all of this technology we have in place and just put it aside for a moment and reconsider why we have to have VAR, what it's supposed to do, and how it can enhance rather than infuriate more often than not, and we might arrive somewhere meanwhile. Otherwise, we'll find lots of people, but not me, having a debate about decisions every single week. Now, those discussions will always happen in football, but you find that with VAR around, they're happening way too often, and the news cycle, in my opinion, is dominated too heavily by it. What do you think? Let me know in the comments section. And by the way, whilst you're here, if you haven't subscribed, subscribe, because there's a community that's building here. We're sharing our thoughts on all sorts of things in football, and it would be great if you could be part of it. Make sure you like this, make sure you share it amongst friends, and it's just great to be back talking to you once again. I'm John Dykes. Let me know what you think about VAR and its role in football.